great game or what? Tim and Jeff Kurkjian, thank you for coming back to listen. This is our third episode, second week of the baseball season. Coming up this weekend will be the Masters, so naturally, we needed to find arguably one of the best baseball golf combo players. So we have John Smoltz, Hall of Fame baseball pitcher, joining us later.
Right, Hall of Fame pitcher, and he's got 11 holes in one, and he's going to tell us all about playing with Tiger and pitching to Tiger. Don't miss that.
So we're going to get to that. We're going to talk a little bit about, because the day we recorded last week's episode, boom, a no-hitter happens in Major League Baseball. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to open up a deck of cards. We're going to do a lot. But first, I want to read some comments from some great people who have been listening. A big shout out to Michael, who says, I want to thank Tim for being the voice of all goodness of baseball since my childhood. I know you don't like being complimented, so I'm gonna rifle through these, okay? Warren says, tell your dad there's nobody on earth I would rather sit next to on a cross-country flight.
Well, that's because I'm really small. I'll be in the middle seat.
Cody, he said he's a diehard Mariners fan. If we're ever in Missoula, Montana, they could go to a Paddleheads game. He's offering you a ticket, food, even if a T-shirt if you want. That's his words.
Look, I grew up in minor league baseball. My first 2 years of covering, nobody loves minor league baseball more than me.
Shout out Seattle Stu, another big Mariners fan. Alan says he loves Jeff and Tim's on-air compatibility. Well, little does he know, this is all just for the cameras, all for the microphones. We don't even speak after we're done here. Fernando said, I'm 19 minutes into episode 1 and still have a smile on my face. Riv, she said Mayor Sean Casey nailed the first pitch for the Cincinnati Reds game, and they're on fire starting their season. And that got me kind of down a rabbit hole on great first pitches thrown by celebrities. And I looked up, one of the worst ones would be also in Cincinnati, Mark Mallory.
Oh, the mayor, the worst ever.
Yeah, so to have a mayor, Sean Casey, kind of, I guess, improve upon Mark Mallory's performance a lot better. John Wall.
Terrible. The fastest guy I've ever seen from one end of the court to the other, and can't throw a baseball at all. Not his fault. He never played growing up.
What about 50 Cent?
Oh, that was, didn't he hit somebody in a sensitive area? That's how bad his throw was?
Yeah. Could you name a 50 Cent song?
Jeff, you know how bad I am with music, especially pop culture music. I have zero chance of naming a 50 Cent song.
The other day, you called him 2 quarters. I said, that's not his name. I did print out just a small blurb from his song, Into Club, and I was wondering if you could just read it for everybody. It's highlighted in yellow. Yeah, grab your readers. This is 50 Cent, Into Club, as read by Tim Kurkjian.
Into Club?
D-A, Club. Right. Yes, please.
Go, shawty, it's your birthday. We're going to party like it's your birthday. We're going to slip Bacardi like it's your birthday. And you don't know, and you know we don't give a crap. It's not your birthday. What does that mean?
It's go, shawty, it's your birthday. We going to party like it's your birthday.
Am I shawty because I'm 5'4.5"?
Well, as you can see, I substituted the word crap for another bad word.
All right, gotcha. All right.
So let's get into baseball, right? I mentioned earlier that it's now a while ago, but we had a no-hitter already in the season. And no-hitters, that is a feat of absolute athleticism and teamwork for that matter.
Right. Ronel Blanco of the Astros, in his 8th major league start, won his 3rd major league game and threw a no-hitter. So here, Roger Clemens never threw a no-hitter. Greg Maddux never threw a no-hitter. Grover Cleveland Alexander had the most wins, 373. He started 600 games and never threw a no-hitter. Most wins by anyone never to throw a no-hitter. Now, the last 2 no-hitters that I've seen, 7 of them now in person, the last 2 have been started by Christian Javier. How weird is that? And of course, the last one was in the World Series last year, and you were there with Emily, your wife. Tell us about that.
Now, if you've listened to the podcast, you know that me and my family, we live outside Philadelphia, so we've adopted the Phillies as our team. And my wife, we went to an NLCS game against the Padres. This was back in 2022. Most exciting game ever. 6 or so runs scored in the first inning. So many hits. It was an exciting, high-scoring game. We said, we got to go to a World Series game. They made it. So we go. And my wife sees my dad after the game and says, that was the most boring game I've ever been to. And, I mean, she's not wrong, but you had to tell her it's history.
Right. I had to say, Emily, look, there's been only one other no-hitter in the history of the World Series, and that was Don Larson, who threw a perfect game in the 1956 World Series. So I know you were rooting for the Phillies. I know it's cold out here, and I know they didn't get any hits, but you were a witness to history today. She's been to 5 Major League games, and one of them is no-hitter. And Nick Petrusevich, who was one of my editors at ESPN.com, get this, his wife, Dana, was also at that game. She has been to 5 games in her entire life, and 2 of them were no-hitters.
No.
That game and when Josh Beckett pitched a no-hitter against the Phillies in Philadelphia. 5 games, 2 no-hitters. 40% of the games she's been to have been a no-hitter. How great is that?
Have I told you my other favorite no-hitter story? Michael Lorenzen threw a no-hitter for the Phillies on my 30th birthday. That's not the important part. The important part was me and my wife were in the hospital, and she already had her epidural. Thank you. She's going in and out of an epidural nap, saying, "Wake me up after the commercials. I want to see him." And the game ended at like 9 p.m. and she had our baby at like 3 a.m. So 6 hours after Michael Lorenzen's. I thought it was going to throw her into labor. That's how excited we were. So that's both of my favorite no-hitter stories, both to do with my wife.
Well, I've covered 7 no-hitters. The first one was a perfect game by Mike Witt of the Angels on the final day of the 1984 season. The game lasted like an hour and 45 minutes because everyone was going home after the game. And the final out of the game was made by Marv Foley, a pinch hitter, great dude for the Rangers. Grounds out to second base to end the perfect game. That was his last at bat in the major leagues. He made the final out of a perfect game. How amazing is that? So Blanco joins 3 others, including Bob Feller, Nomo and Bert Hooton are the others, to pitch a no-hitter in your first start of the season. And it was the earliest no-hitter ever. And as we said on the podcast 2 weeks ago, Bob Feller threw his on opening day.
Wow.
Only guy ever to do that. And I told you that I batted against Bob Feller in a minor league ballpark. Did I ever tell you that story?
You never told me that.
So Pop, our great Pop, my father, your grandfather, he always told me growing up the greatest pitcher I've ever seen was Bob Feller. So Bob Feller would travel around to minor league ballparks, and he came to Alexandria, Virginia, when I was covering the Class A team there, and he would put on a pitching exhibition to all the writers who cover the team. I'm like the only writer covering the team. So I actually hit against Bob Feller. Now, look, I played in high school, and he's throwing 55 miles an hour. And keep in mind, he was 62 years old. I hit a couple of balls hard off of him, and then he threw a bunch of curveballs on the outside part of the plate. But the best part was, Jeff, afterwards, this was so great. I got a certificate that said, I batted against Bob Feller. And in very large writing at the bottom of the certificate, it said, the aforementioned slugger realizes if he had faced Mr. Feller in his prime, the results would have been different. No kidding. My point is, if I'd faced Bob Feller in 1940, he could have thrown me 1,000 pitches, and I wouldn't put one in play, and I wouldn't make contact in any of them. Let's understand that first.
I'm glad they put that legal disclaimer at the bottom just to keep your ego in check, right?
Yes. Right.
So on the show, of course, we release every single Tuesday. Make sure to follow wherever you're listening right now. You can also go to greatgameorwhat.com to find out other ways to listen. But we do an on this date in baseball. So you might be listening not on this date, but it's a very significant day today.
April 8th, 1974, Hank Aaron hit home run number 715. This is the 50th anniversary of him passing Babe Ruth on the all-time home run list. I remember I was sitting in our rec room with Pop, Uncle Andy, and Uncle Matt, and we're watching, and Hank Aaron's going to hit a home run tonight, we think. And he hits a home run off to Al Downing for number 715. It was an unbelievable call by Vin Scully, and it was an amazing night. But here's how revered Hank Aaron is in our game. He died a few years ago. Absolute terrible news. Aaron Boone, who grew up in a baseball family and can talk to anybody about anything, came up to me during the All-Star game in Minnesota 10 years ago. And he looked at me like this, Jeff, and he went, you can't believe who I just saw in the elevator. And he's like trembling. I said, who? He said, Hank Aaron. And I said, what'd you say to him? He said, I couldn't say anything. I was too afraid. I said, why? And he goes, because it's Hank Aaron. That's how revered he was to everyone. Craig Counsell, former Brewers manager, now the manager of the Cubs, told me when he was working for the Brewers, not as the manager, Hank Aaron is on stage making a speech and talking to the people, and he calls Craig Counsell out of the crowd to come up and talk about what it's like for a Milwaukee kid to actually make it to the major leagues and play in the major leagues, playing in Milwaukee. So Craig Counsell's walking up there going, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. Hank Aaron just called me up here. And then he said, I'm sitting on the stage and Hank Aaron is asking me questions about baseball. He said, I almost couldn't speak. I was so amazed. And this guy is the biggest, one of the greatest players of all time. Now he's asking me questions about baseball. And again, Jeff, even though I have loved doing everything with you on air, the biggest thrill of my on-air lifetime was when Hank Aaron joined Dave Fleming, Eduardo Perez, and myself in the booth in Atlanta 5 years ago. He sat right next to us. He sat next to us and did 4 innings on the air during a game. An hour and a half, I'm sitting next to Hank Aaron. He was so charming. He was so funny. His recall was unbelievable. Jeff, I stopped keeping score of the game. I've never done that before or since because I was captivated that I'm sitting next to Hank Aaron and he's telling all of these amazing stories. So after the game, I checked Twitter. Never a good idea to check Twitter after a baseball game. Some guy writes in and he says, if anyone looks at you the way that Tim Kurkjian looked at Hank Aaron tonight, you should marry that person. And that was the ultimate compliment because, again, I was completely captivated that I was sitting next to not only Hank Aaron, one of the greatest players ever, but one of the nicest people I've ever met.
Well, we also have a little bit of a celebration, a happy birthday, when not a baseball player, but a baseball writer that you spent most of your career, still to this day, looking up to.
Right. Peter Gammons, for me, today is Peter Gammons, or April 9th is Peter Gammons' 79th birthday. Peter is the greatest, for me, the greatest baseball writer of all time. He taught us all how to write a game story. He taught us all how to do Sunday notes. He's the greatest reporter in the history of the sport. This is the only story you need to know about Peter Gammons. I'm covering the Rangers. I'm the beat guy for the Rangers at the Dallas Morning News in the mid-'80s. No one knows more about my team than I do because I'm there every day. So I call Peter, who's covering the Red Sox, and I said, Peter, my team is making a trade today. I can't figure out what it is, but I know they're making a trade. And he goes, oh, you guys are getting Cliff Johnson today from the Blue Jays. And 2 hours later, they got Cliff Johnson from the Blue Jays. The beat writer for the Boston Red Sox knew more than the beat writer for the Texas Rangers about the Rangers. But that's who Peter was. So a few years ago, I went to the Braves clubhouse in spring training in Orlando. And I'm going up to the very kind elderly guy who's protecting, the security guy letting you into the clubhouse. So I take out my pass and I'm about to show it to him. And he looks at me and goes, oh, you don't need to do that. I know who you are. I've been reading you. I've been watching you for years. It's so good to see you, Peter. So he thought I was Peter Gammons, and it was the greatest compliment ever that someone mistook me for the greatest baseball writer of all time.
We want to get into our Kurkjians. Don't forget, we have John Smoltz, Hall of Fame baseball pitcher, along with arguably maybe one of the best baseball golf players of all time. He's going to talk about playing with Tiger Woods. That's coming up, but let's get into our Kurkjians now.
Right. Well, I'm going to need my glasses for this one. The Kurkjians, Jeff, as you know, are all the quirky things that I love to come up with. And one thing that Peter taught me to do was when you look at a line score every night at a game, sometimes the line score looks like a phone number. Okay. Uh-oh. So if you get 2 in the first, none in the second, 2 in the third, now you have a 202 area code going. All right. So I checked this pathetic as I am, I check this every single day because Peter once looked at the line score at Fenway Park. He saw a phone number. He called it, and it was a working number. It was I swear, it was a warehouse. So about 5 years ago, having followed Peter's lead, I found the perfect phone number, and I called it. And some woman answered the phone, and I was so embarrassed. It was so intrusive. It was borderline illegal. I just hung up the phone. What was I supposed to say? I saw your phone number on the line score at a stadium tonight. So the Cubs the other day had a 2 in the first, 1 in the second, 3 in the third. So we have a 213 area code. That's LA. So 213-103-2012. It looks, I'm not going to call it, neither's anybody else, but it looks like a phone number. And if you don't think I am unhealthy in the way that I approach the box scores every morning I look for a phone number in the line score. The first, 10 letters, first 10 numbers that come up. That's the first thing I came up with. Is there anything worse than that, Jeff?
You are a sad, strange little man. And this is what brings you true entertainment. But that's the beauty of baseball, the numbers of the game. I joke. I think that's really great. And I think there will be people listening that are going to call that poor number now.
No. Do not call that number. All right. So the second one is from Matt Hicks and Eric Nadell, my broadcaster friends for the Rangers. They called me to say, hey, we saw a play last night we've never seen before. It's going to be hard to explain. But the Rangers are playing the Rays. And Curtis Mead, the third baseman for the Rays, is in a shift, so he's almost at second base. There's a runner on first base, Wyatt Langford. Ground ball to the third baseman. He throws it to first for the out. Wyatt Langford is running around second. He sees nobody is at third, so he goes from first to third on a ground out. Then he recognizes the catcher has moved to first base, and now home plate is unattended. The pitcher, Ryan Pepiot, ran home, caught the ball, and tagged Wyatt Langford out at the plate. So we score that putout, Jeff, 5-3-1. That's a double play. Out at first, out at the plate. I called the Elias Sports Bureau. Frank, and I can say this with all honesty, Jeff, Frank is way more important in my life than you are right now. Frank looks up everything for me when I can't find it myself, and he went back to the early 70s as far as the Elias could go back, and they've never seen a 5-3-1 double play. So Eric and Matt told me, we've never seen it. I know I've never seen it. Well, apparently it hasn't happened in the last, 50 years. That's how strange that was. Plus, we had a bizarre thing happen the other night. Yankees and Diamondbacks, and a guy named Scott McGuff is a relief pitcher for the Diamondbacks. And the Diamondbacks lost their designated hitter in the game because they had to make all sorts of moves. So now they're down to their last out. And Scott McGuff, a pitcher who has never batted in a major league game, is now up with the tying run at second. He's never batted in a game before, and of course he strikes out to end the game. So the Elias check for me, since 1961, only 4 times has a pitcher in his first major league plate appearance made the final out of a game. I just slapped my forehead. I said, I've never seen anything like this happen. It's happened 4 times in the last 63 years. I'm surprised about that. Those are the Kurkjians for the week.
Scott McGuff, you said?
Yes.
Kind of sounds like a puppet assistant on a local access TV show. We bring in Scott McGuff. Scott?
Yes. The other thing we didn't get to, Jeff, the one thing that I watch every year is teams that start off without a win,
right,
a week into the season. And I only privately root for them to win because I've been around some really bad situations.
There have been a couple people who have chimed in on our website, greatgamerone.com, and said, hey, my Marlins, Tim, can you give me some prospects I can be hopeful for? Give them hope, maybe?
The Marlins have really good pitching, but they got off to a terrible start. But you got to keep in mind, Jeff, who you're talking to here. I covered the 1988 Baltimore Orioles, who lost their first 21 games to start the season. The previous record was 14. They blew by that and made it to 20. They were 0-21, the agony of the Orioles. So the story there is that Frank Robinson, the manager of the Orioles, he had already replaced Cal Ripken Sr. Frank takes the writers out to dinner after loss like number 18 in Minneapolis, right? He'd never taken us out to dinner before or after. I just think he needed strength in numbers. So halfway through dinner, I say to Frank, who is a funny man, I said, Frank, has anyone really interesting called you during this streak? And he goes, yeah, the president called me today. So I said, Frank was a big kidder. So I pushed him on it 3 times, and he said, damn it, the president of the United States called me today. I said, Frank, what did he say? He said, Frank, I know what you're going through. And Frank said, Mr. President, you got no idea what I'm going through. So we always root for teams to get off the schneid and win a game early, in part because I want to be some small part of history that no one ever matches the 0-21 that I covered in 1988.
Coming up next, we're going to open up a deck of cards, which has quickly, this is exciting, been some of our listeners' favorite moments of the show because they remember doing this. We did it as kids. You did it as a kid. So we're going to do It's in the Cards next. We're going to revisit our sack fly tracker. We're going to put my dad to the test with League in the Lid, where we pull out a random team, and he has to tell a story about it. And then, of course, we're talking to Hall of Famer John Smoltz here on Is This a Great Game or What? It's in the Cards on Is This a Great Game or What? Quickly becoming my favorite part of the show because we're opening baseball cards. It's like a childhood dream.
Right. I love that so much as a kid, and I still love doing it today.
All right, so first up, Ichiro Suzuki card from Topps.
Easy. Okay, first ballot Hall of Famer, an amazing hitter, and one of the best defensive right fielders I've ever seen. Jeff, he hit a bouncing ball in a major league game and hit a line drive up the middle on a ball that hit before home plate. I called Pat Gillick, the general manager of the Mariners, the next day, and I said, what was that? And he goes, oh, he used to practice that in Japan all the time. He practiced hitting a bouncing ball just in case it ever came up in a major league game. So keep in mind, Ichiro, in his 3rd game of his major league career, got his career batting average over 300 in his 3rd major league game, and it never dipped below 300 at any point on any day for the rest of his career.
That's unbelievable.
That's how great a hitter Ichiro was. And he really loved his bats. No one was ever allowed to touch his bats. And he never threw his bat down if he made an out because his bat was his most important thing. And he once said that a great carpenter, not like I would know anything about this, never throws his favorite hammer around. Right. He protects it. He nourishes it. That's how he took care of his bats. Eduardo Perez, our dear friend, told me he stole one of Ichiro's bats and brought it into a game. Ichiro was not pleased that anyone would touch his bats. And the other thing, Jeff, is that Bobby Valentine told me that Ichiro was a mathematical genius. He could go into an elevator and look at all the buttons of the floor numbers on the right side and count them up in his head in 3 seconds. And he would go 248. And Bobby went like this. Oh my God. And Bobby thinks one reason Ichiro was such a great outfielder is he had a mathematical, geometric mind where he could see where the ball was going because he understood the angles of the field. He could see a ball go up in the air and go, that's going to end up here, and he would run a direct route to it. Ichiro, fascinating player.
Next up in the pack, it's a Tyler O'Neill card. Dad, can I take this one?
Yes, take it.
We talked about this on the podcast. 5 years in a row on opening day, he's hit a home run.
Right.
That's incredible.
That's the history of baseball. No one's ever done that. That's why baseball's so great, Jeff. No greatest stat in the history of the NBA isn't done by, anyone other than Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and Wilt Chamberlain. But guys who aren't the greatest players in the world have done stuff that no one else in the history of the sport has ever done.
Do you have any Barry Larkin stories? That's the next card we pulled out, and I love this card. If you don't follow us on YouTube, you can actually watch us open the cards and see the cards as well. Great Game or What? Just search it on YouTube because he's walking his dogs in this card.
Right. Well, Barry, of course, is a Hall of Fame shortstop. I think one of the maybe 6 greatest shortstops of all time. But I did a little research on this, and I think I'm right about this. His son, Shane, played in the NBA. And when you look at a baseball playing father and a basketball playing son, This is the greatest father-son, one-place baseball, one-place NBA basketball of all time. The Larkins, Barry and Shane Larkin.
And they gave my Syracuse Orange a hard time. Shane did, so
Right.
I don't want to talk any further on that. Here's Bobby Witt Jr. I like this card a lot. It's got kind of an architectural design to it.
Yeah, now Bobby Witt is going to end up being, I believe, early on, a Hall of Fame shortstop someday. Jeff, combination, power, speed, and understanding of what he's doing. Of course, his dad is Bobby Witt, who pitched in the major leagues for years and threw really, really hard. And he just signed Bobby Witt Jr. like a $270 million contract, and his dad served as his agent. If I served as your agent, I don't know if we're getting anything close to, we might get $27,000.
Well, you know the story of my agent when I started in radio? So, Mom, your wife was my agent. She's a former lawyer, and it was really tough when I had to fire her to hire my current agent. This is I am not even kidding. I'm not doing a bit. I had to tell her, Mom, you just don't have the connections in the industry I'm looking for. And last but not least, for It's in the Cards here, we've got a Houston Astros card here, Framber Valdez.
Yeah, Framber Valdez is one of the best pitchers in the game. He has a tremendous curveball. He's got a tremendous sinker. He's grounded in a double play waiting to happen. But what fascinates me about him, Jeff, is I saw him a couple years ago. He's left-handed, of course. He was playing long toss in the outfield, and he was throwing with his right hand. And you know how much I love ambidexterity. How can one of the best pitchers in the major leagues be left-handed and can also throw right-handed? I'd give my right arm to be ambidextrous. It's unbelievable how well he throws a baseball, and I have a million ambidextrous stories, which we won't get into today, but one of the best left-handed pitchers in baseball can also throw a baseball 85 miles an hour with his right hand.
Listen, Dad, as a new dad, when you land a great dad joke like that, I'd give my right arm to be ambidextrous. You have to give us time to respond. You said it way too quickly. And
You're supposed to get it right away.
I did, but I didn't have time to laugh or compliment it. I love dad jokes. All right, so that's It's in the Cards this week. We have John Smoltz coming up, but first, our sac fly tracker. My dad is fascinated by sacrifice flies, and where are we at this season?
All right. We've had more sacrifice flies first couple weeks of the season than we did last year. We're on a much higher pace, and I noticed that Bo Naylor of the Guardians had 2 sacrifice flies in one game, and so did a couple other guys this week. So that always brings me to Joey Gallo, who now plays for the Nationals, and I love Joey Gallo. He's one of the most entertaining players. He's huge. He can run. He's got unbelievable power. Strikes out all the time. But he has, Jeff, 2 sacrifice flies in his entire career. And he's played like 8 years. 2 sacrifice flies. Bo Naylor had 2 in one game. Joey Gallo has 2 in his career. Now, keep in mind, just try to follow me on this. Joey Gallo hit 96 home runs in the major leagues before he hit his first sacrifice fly.
Wow.
He hit 96 balls over a fence. Not one of them was caught on the warning track with a runner on third to score a runner. So that's why when I write a book, I'm fascinated by sacrifice flies. It is a really interesting thing. We had a bunch of them, and now Bo Naylor had 2 in one game, as many as Joey Gallo has had in his entire career.
Are you ready to be put to the test again?
Yes.
Okay, so this is, we started this last week on the podcast. It's called The League in the Lid. So I've taken all 30 major league teams. Now, we took out the Cincinnati Reds because we talked about them last week. If you're a Reds fan, go back to episode 2 and listen, because Dad's going to be put to the test of his favorite story about insert team here when I pull them out. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. All right, here we go. The League in the Lid. Oh, this is an easy one.
What?
New York Yankees.
Oh, it's easy.
I mean,
whatever.
You joked about it.
All right.
I don't know how this segment's going to go, but the Yankees, that's a softball,
I got lucky
right?
2 weeks in a row. The Reds, first week of the season, Now the Yankees. All right. There's no way around this. The Yankees are the greatest franchise in the history of professional sports. They have won 27 World Series. They have the record for the most consecutive seasons above 500. 39 straight years, the Yankees finished over 500. The next longest streak is also by the Yankees, and it is a current active streak, 31 years. The next longest streak by any team after that is 18 by the Orioles. So it just shows you how dominant the Yankees have been. 39, 31, they're the record holders, and the next is 18. No other team has ever come close to that level of streak above 500. That's how great the Yankees are, and I'm going to put myself out there. Here's the 7 greatest Yankees of all time. We'll go over this some other time. In order: Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Mickey Mantle, Joe DiMaggio, Yogi Berra, Derek Jeter, Mariano Rivera, Whitey Ford. Those are the 8 greatest Yankees of all time, and no team in the history of baseball can put up 8 guys that comes close to matching those.
I noticed you hesitated a little bit before Jeter. Is that because you were debating Mariano or Jeter?
Yeah. Look, I think the top 5 is unassailable. You can't go anywhere else other than Ruth, Gehrig, Mantle, DiMaggio, and Yogi Berra. That's my feeling.
All right, so we have John Smoltz, coming up. He is an amazing golfer, and we have the Masters coming up this weekend, so he's the perfect guest to have on. We're going to talk golf with John Smoltz. He has 11 hole-in-ones. We're going to ask him about them. And, I mean, you and I, have you even come close? I think the closest I came was about 8 inches. This is the best shot I've ever made.
No, I've never had a hole-in-one. John Smoltz is going to tell us about the hole-in-one that he had on a par 4. But, Jeff, I love the game of golf, and there are so many similarities between golf and baseball. To me, they're the 2 hardest games in the world to play. Baseball being 1, golf being 2. And baseball players love to play golf. And because the swings are similar, mindset is similar, hand-eye is similar, and there's so many great, amazing golf stories out there. So Jim Cott, Hall of Fame pitcher Jim Cott, this is a true story. He confirmed it. At age 80, he shot his age twice in 1 week.
What?
So he's 80, so he broke 80 twice in 1 week. But here's the thing, Jeff. He did it playing left-handed one time, and the next time he did it playing right-handed. So
I'd give up my right arm to be ambidextrous. That's
You'd also give up your right arm to shoot 78. He did it left-handed and right-handed in the same week. The best of all the active players is Aaron Hicks, who's now with the Angels. He's been playing since he was 5 years old. Apparently, he hits it off the end of the world. He plays all the time in the offseason. He rarely plays during the season because he doesn't want to make it look bad. Hey, I played golf today, and then I didn't have a good game tonight. But he's probably the best. Jeff McNeil of the Mets is really good too. In fact, Buck Showalter had a little pitching green put out beyond the center field fence in spring training. So when Jeff McNeil got a little bit bored, he could go out there and putt and chip in between ground balls at batting practice. Brandon Inge, who you've never heard of, but I love Brandon Inge. Andy Van Slyke told me that Brandon Inge hits a golf ball farther than any person he's ever seen in his entire life. And he said if he played against Tiger, he said Tiger would have to play from the red tees to get to where Brandon Inge hits it from. Now, Brandon Inge was a good baseball player, third baseman, had some power. I refuse to believe that, but Andy Van Slyke is a scratch golfer. He's not making this up. Brandon Inge goes over 400 yards. And speaking of Tiger, I'm going to use a bad word here, Jeff. You're going to have to deal with it.
Okay.
Buck Showalter's playing in Orlando one day, and he's walking down the fairway on this course, and Tiger is on the other fairway. Tiger loves baseball. He goes up to Buck Showalter and says, "Can I play with you guys tomorrow?" Usually, of course, it's the other way around. "Tiger, can we please play with you?" So they end up playing the next day, and they're in a match, and Tiger and Buck are teammates, and they get to 18, and the entire match is on the line, okay? And Buck, it's a par 4, okay? And Tiger on 18 looks at his partner with everything on the line, and he says, "Do you think you can make a fucking 5 here?" And Buck is so insulted and so angry that he parred 18 and they won the match because Tiger pointed right at him and said, "Can you make a 5 here?" That's the beauty of golf and baseball. There are so many similarities.
Before we get to John Smoltz, I have a Kurkjian quandary for you. It's a hypothetical. Me and my buddies, shout out my buddies in Ball is Life. They listen to every single episode. We're in a fantasy football group. We're idiot friends from when we were 5 years old. Here's our hypothetical, right? The quandary for you. Do you take $10,000 now? That's option one. Or I give you 24 hours to hit a hole-in-one from 135 yards out, a par 3. And if you do it in a 24-hour span, you get $1 million. What do you do?
So am I taking the 10 grand or going for $1 million and I can hit balls for 24 hours 24, in a row?
But I mean, all physical limitations as well, right? Like, think about you at your age, right? Me at my age even.
With an artificial hip.
With one hip, right? So are you able, objectively, how long can you hit balls for before you get tired? Then you got to eat. You probably got to sleep, at least nap in those 24 hours.
All right. Now, again, my father, your grandfather, Pop, was a mathematician, PhD, undergrad, MIT. I think he would say take the $10,000 because what are the chances, even in 24 hours, that I'm going to hit a ball in a hole from 135 yards? Jeff, look, I don't play much at all anymore, but I used to play a lot. How many times have I played a par 3 and never had a hole-in-one? I am not going to make a hole-in-one during a 24-hour period on a 135-yard hole. So give me the 10 grand and we'll go from there.
I disagree. I'm taking the shot at $1 million. And I'll tell you why, all right? $10,000, I've got a baby who's 8 months old, right? $10,000, that's gone in an instant, right? That's not even a down payment sizable enough for a car when she turns 16. $1 million, we've got college, we've got anything she could possibly need in the moment. All of those expenses are covered. They say it's a 12,000 to 1 chance that you could hit a hole-in-one, right? I mean, I don't know where they get these numbers from, but if you do the quick math, right? So let's just say it's as objective as 12,000 divided by 24. That means, well, now I'm feeling less excited. 500 shots an hour.
You're going to be exhausted. You can't when you go to the driving range, most people who aren't real players, they're exhausted after 20 minutes. You're going to hit it for 24 hours? Just take the 10 grand.
You know what we're going to do? We're going to put a poll up on our Twitter and our Facebook page at Great Game or What. Would you take the 10,000 outright? Or would you try 24 hours, 135 yards out, par 3? If you hit it in, it's $1 million. I want to hear what you have to say. And then next week, we'll just do a quick update on what our listeners had to say. Do you agree with Tim or you agree with Jeff? Coming up next, John Smoltz joins us to talk golf, to talk his Hall of Fame career.
John Smoltz has 11 holes in one. Following that hypothetical question,
he would definitely take the 24
He would get
hours.
11 in 24 hours.
It's coming up next on Is This a Great Game or What? It is the Masters week. Is this a great game or what? And we've got a really special guest because not only a Hall of Fame baseball player, but an incredible golfer. John Smoltz is on the podcast. Woo!
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right, John, let's get right to it. How many holes in one do you have, and what are the circumstances behind your last one? And tell the truth.
Well, I have 11 hole-in-ones.
Oh, my.
And the last one was a pretty cool one because it happened 10 years after my 10th one. And my 10th one happened to be on a par 4. So I thought that was going to lock me out for the rest of, I figured if you get a hole-in-one on a par 4, that's it, right? You're done. So about 10, 11 years go by, and then I got a hole-in-one at Michael Jordan's course, Grove 23. And that one was with my buddies, a 5-some, and that one was probably as exciting of a hole-in-one because of the circumstances surrounding it and certainly where it happened. But after the par 4 hole-in-one, I figured I was done. And but lo and behold, I broke the seal. And so hopefully, the ironic part about the entire hole-in-one thing, I've never gotten a hole-in-one at any one of my home golf courses. And I had and have had a lot of home golf courses.
So you're doing this all on the road then, is what you're saying?
That's exactly right. All on the road. And I did have a hole-in-one in a professional tournament, which was really cool. The Georgia Open My first professional tournament, I got a hole in one. I made the cut. I was nervous. I was beyond nervous just to compete. It was in Savannah, and I went on a birdie eagle barrage just to get to I finished 29th, but I had 16 birdies, 3 eagles in 4 days and finished 1 under. So if that tells you how my round was going.
You had a few of those. Okay, John, you played golf with Tiger Woods at Augusta. We'll get to that in a minute. But first, I want you to tell me about the time that you faced Tiger Woods in a sim game 15 years ago or so, whatever it was, in Orlando at like 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday. I was there. Tell us what happened when Tiger was the hitter and you were the pitcher.
Well, he had always mentioned to me about wanting to face me and seeing what that would be like. And I said, Tiger, I'm more concerned about what you might have happen to you. Not that I would hit you. That's not what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned that you would jam your thumb or do something that's going to cause you to miss time in golf. He's like, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I said, well, here's a scenario that could work. I have a simulated game that no one's going to be there. I'm working on some stuff and we'll set it up. Brian McCann will be the catcher. And he goes, done. Let's do it. So he went and took some batting practice. He got some tips. Again, I was more worried about him jamming his thumb than anything else. And he said, don't mess around with me. Give me everything you got. And I'm like, Tiger, I mean, I know you're a good athlete. I get it. It'd be like saying I could make the cut at the Masters. It's not going to happen. But inevitably, he declared himself 1 for 4. He hit a little dribbler up the middle that he deemed a base hit with a walk. Brian McCann was too afraid to call strikes on Tiger Woods. But, it's one of those scenarios where I've gotten a chance to live out, professional golf and how difficult it is. We have a lot of armchair quarterbacks sitting at home thinking, well, I could have shot that number at that golf course. No, you can't. Just like any other sport, athlete trying to compete in another sport is very difficult. And Tiger, I'm telling you, he handled the bet well. It's just there's no way to perceive that velocity and that spin. No matter what you did in your high school career or what you did before that. So it was a fun experience. I got some great pictures out of it. It's one of the most unique times that we've had both off the golf course. And yeah, so that's how that story went down. And I think he got a little bit mad when he found out I was trying to get him to hit it there at the end.
John, that's how I remember it. You blew him away the first at bat, and then each at bat after that, you gave him more of a chance. How could he not see that?
I have to hear about you going onto the course at Augusta with him, now in his territory.
What was that?
Yeah, so that was such a cool story, and only the greatest manager in the world, Bobby Cox, could have let that happen. He gave me the opportunity for Tiger to fly me up on Sunday morning, a couple of weeks before the Masters, and play with Tiger and a member. And it was just so surreal. I had a hard time sleeping the night before, and I really felt like I had to pinch myself when I got there. It wasn't about playing Tiger. It wasn't about playing Augusta. I've done that. It was playing Augusta with Tiger on Sunday with Sunday pins. Like all the Sunday pins for the tournament were in play. And I was late getting to the plane. I was nervous. I couldn't find the FBO. It cost us practice time at the range. We showed up and had to go right to the first tee. And I did. I striped the first ball right down the middle, left of the trap. He hit it in the trap on the right-hand side. We're walking down that hill, and he looked at me and goes, "This might be your day." And I said, I know it's going to be my day. And unfortunately, I double bogeyed from the middle of the fairway. He parred. He shot 66. I think I shot 76. Wow. It was the most It was the most boring 66 I've ever seen in my life. He did not miss a shot, but he didn't put it in any place where he could get in trouble.
Right. And what about his focus, John? I was told by Adam LaRoche, one of your former teammates who played golf with him, that he's the life of the party on the course. And then the minute he looks down at the ball, he is in a total trance and stays in it until he hits it. Is that what you saw from him?
Yeah. Now, when we played, my rule was never get him to that point. If you talk trash, if you got him going, then he got to that point. He was enjoying the round. He just wanted to beat you. But you're right. He has a Michael Jordan type laser-esque focus to the prize, and no one's going to get in the way. And his ability to kind of reamp up his own adrenaline is incredible. So I'll give you one quick story about how that happened. We were playing. My buddy flew me down. He was about a 12 or 8 handicap at the time. Everybody else was a scratch golfer or plus. And it was a par 5. It was the 5th hole. And I actually had won the first 4 holes against Tiger, 2 of those with strokes. And we come to this par 5, and the scorecard read 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So 5 different players, 5 different scores. And when I pulled the ball out of the hole, my buddy made the hole in one. I said, what's more believable when we get home, Scotty? The fact that you made a hole in one or you beat Tiger by 4 on one hole. Well, Tiger gave me a number 1 signal, if you know, with one of his fingers, and went into a 12 under in the next 22 hole stretch. We played 27 holes. And that's what I'm talking about.
When you're pitching, you don't think about all those eyes are on you, but you do in golf. Is that because you're a Hall of Fame pitcher and you've done it more than you have played golf as much as you played?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more of an uncomfortable feeling, right? My office was the mound. I'm trying to make the office my golf course now, but I just don't have enough reps or practice to be able to be comfortable. See, what happens in sports, and I've said this all to wherever I've gone, when you're in a sporting event, you know somebody has the advantage. Now, the goal is to never convey that. When you're on the mound and you're facing a hitter, you know right away either you got the advantage or the hitter does. And on the mound, I learned how to fake it, and I learned how to not show that secret. That's kind of always been the battle in the sport. In golf, you can try to hide it all you want. There's going to be a point on the golf course where it shows where you're weak at, and it exposes you immediately. And I think golf is more about exposing the unbelievable humility and humbleness of why no one has been able to master it. Because at some point you're going to be in that spot where you go, uh-oh, I don't like this. And all the world can see it. So I just love the intrigue about it. I love trying to get better. And I learn from all my failures. Some of my worst rounds become my greatest teaching moments. Yes, it's humiliating. And yes, no one likes shooting an 86 or an 87 in a US Open, my first one. But I came back the next day and shot 75 or 76 and improved by 10 shots. I knew I wasn't going to make the cut, but it served me well for a lot of more opportunities later on.
John, Jeff Francoeur is our dear friend, really good Major League Baseball player, and one of your best friends and a really good golfer. But tell us about the time you went to 18 with him and he had you dead to rights. Tell that story, please.
Yeah, so I played with a lot of my teammates. Whenever we'd go to spring training, it was more able for the position players to play. The regular season, it was more difficult. He wanted to beat me so bad. He's like the bull in the china shop, great athlete. He ran over everybody in high school, just so much superior over everybody else in his high school career that he thought he could beat me in golf. And up until this point, he hadn't, but he hits it 50 yards by me. He's got raw talent, but you could tell, there are moments like I mentioned, you get exposed in golf. There's that big number always waiting out there if you're not careful. Well, he had me by 5 shots going into the 18th hole at the Ritz-Carlton where they play the father and son tournament. So, he had already worked out in the cart with Brian McCann what he was going to do in the clubhouse. He was going to print out the golf cards. He was going to post it in everyone's locker. He had everything written out and done. And, for the most part, in a day and age of win probability, he would have had about a 98, 99% win probability in this match. So he comes up to me in the 18th hole and he says, "Well, old man, I finally got you." I said, "Yeah, you played good today, kid, but we got one more hole to go. Let's just see what happens. But you played good. It's a par 5, dogleg kind of left around. Now, there's more room right than and there's water all left." Well, he was trying to hit it right for sure, but he pulled it left and it hit in the water, bounced on the ground, hit in the water. Well, I quickly told him, like, you're not going to gain much yardage by dropping. You might as well re-tee. Now, if he'd have dropped, he couldn't lose. But he wanted to hit off the tee, and he did. He hit it further left, this time left of the water into the hotel. And I said, "You know the drill. Drop it again, re-tee." He did it again. He hit it in the water again. And long story short, he makes a 15 or 14 on the hole, and I make a 4. I birdied the hole and beat him by 10, and I actually won by 5. So it completely flipped the script. The best part about the whole thing was me going over the card with him in the hole, knowing full well he made a 14, but I said he got a 15. So here we are arguing over one stroke on the hole that I know. I just want to hear him say it. I want to hear him go over. So 1 off the tee, 3 off the tee, 5 off the tee, 7 drop, 9 chunks. So it was a fun. I never said a word about it in the clubhouse. I think he thought I was going to really play this up. I never said a word, which probably puzzled him. But what I did do is every time we went to go play golf, I would either tell the pro or the cart girl, whatever the price is, just tell them 14. So I used the number 14 so much that he finally said, "Would you please stop?" And I said, "I will."
Oh, that's beautiful. John, back to the precision of the PGA Tour players. You told me a story on a plane 2 years ago about a pro who was playing a new course, never played there, not in a tournament, and his playing partner said, "Aim at the clock over the trees," or whatever it was. Tell us what the pro said when he was told to aim at the clock.
Yeah, he was talking about the great golfer in the pro in the past. Oh my gosh, not Sam Snead, maybe Bobby Jones. Oh man,
Ben Hogan.
Drawing a blank on Ben Hogan. Okay. Thank you, Ben Hogan. He said when Ben Hogan was here, and I said this to him, he said, "Which hand of the clock do you want me to hit it towards?" And when you see this clock up in the skyline, you're like, okay, really? But that's how great Ben Hogan was. That's how great these guys are. When you tell them to aim at which branch, which twig, like they're so finite in their ability to match their equipment with their mechanics. It's amazing. And honestly, I remember telling myself back in the day, because I would see pros get mad, just get so mad. They hit it to 10 feet and you'd swear they hit it in the hazard, right? And I said, I will never act like that. I will never be the guy that thinks I should always hit it closer, or I should. Boy, I got right into that and find myself doing the same thing. So it is a game that is nauseating, but addicting and all-consuming, because every day something different can happen to change the dynamics. Like I said, you can get bailed out. You could be a very lucky pitcher in the game and be considered a winner, like win 20 games but have a 6 ERA because you've got run support or great defense or whatever. In golf, it really is about timing, Mother Nature, being able to be at the right place at the right time.
All right, last one for me, John. I had a hip replacement like you did. Only one hip. You had them both done. I know your doctor's going to get mad at you, but how soon after your hip replacement did you play, and what did you shoot?
Yeah, so I'm very imaginative in my rehab. I need some carrot dangling in front of me to get through. And the rehab is not extensive for hips. It's just you'd be disciplined to what they tell you to do, and you just be careful. Well, I was very careful. And I know protocol is for averages. Averages meaning everybody who's had the surgery, here's your average, here's what's called for. And then there's the protocol that I put forward to myself. I probably, I know I did. I played 4 weeks after I had hip replacement, but let me say the big but. I didn't move my hip to play. So I really didn't play golf. I swung with all arms, and I swung with like 60-gram shafts, 40-gram shafts, something that you wouldn't want to play golf with when you're healthy. But it passed the time. I went to the up tees. I ended up shooting under par the front 9, which was blowing everyone's it blew my I just couldn't believe it. But then they moved me back a tee, and then reality set back in, and I think I shot 1 or 6 over after that. But my hips are doing great. I'm a year and change on one, and I'm approaching 7 months on the other. I've played now 4 games of basketball. I'm back in a league. So
Wow.
I'm getting after it a little bit and enjoying it.
I love that we got to talk mostly golf with Hall of Fame baseball pitcher John Smoltz, with it being the Masters. John, thank you so much for joining the podcast. We really, really appreciate your time. Thank you again.
My pleasure, guys.
Thank you, John.
Thank you again to John Smoltz, and we're really excited. Next week, you should join us because we have a very special episode surrounding Jackie Robinson Day. Jerry Hairston Jr. is going to join us. He's a 3-generation Major League Baseball player. His dad played, and his grandfather played in the major leagues, but also in the Negro League. So very interesting perspective on Jackie Robinson Day. Excited for you to join us next week. We started today's episode talking about no-hitters. Why not end today's episode with no-hitters?
Right. So Nolan Ryan threw the most no-hitters, of course, with 7. Nolan Ryan is the greatest power pitcher of all time. He's the hardest pitcher to hit in Major League history. He was unbelievably mean on the mound, and that is a compliment. Harold Reynolds once told me as a skinny rookie, he took a big swing against Nolan Ryan, didn't even hit the ball, and Ryan knocked him down on the next pitch because no skinny rookie is going to swing that hard against Nolan Ryan. And even though he was mean on the mound, he still is one of the kindest people that I've ever met. I believe it was 27 of his teammates named their son after Nolan Ryan. And I remember when Rance Mulliniks, who played for the Blue Jays a million years ago, was asked once, what would the world be like if everyone was like Nolan Ryan? And he said, well, everyone would love each other and no one would get a hit. That is Nolan Ryan.
A perfect way to wrap up this week's show. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure to follow wherever you're listening. Share the show with a baseball fan, friend, or family member of yours. And thank you once again for joining us and being a part of our family.